Well, that's it. We had this conversation last week with one of those organizers here in the studio, telling us how far they have gone and some of the things they have put in place. So we'll follow that. They're having more meetings, I think, this month and next month to put finishing touches to the phase 2, expectantly. That the implementation will also begin really soon. But now let's move on the program now and talk about a whole lot of things. It's everybody's talking about the first half and outlook for the second half. Let's look at some of the policy review we have seen since President Bola Tinubu came on board, and perhaps discuss how far or expectations and the impact so far. We're not up on that list, of course, is the subsidy removal. You also have the unification of the exchange rate and what it's doing all over. Well, joining us to discuss this is my namesake. He's Inyobong Hussein, joins us virtually from Abuja. Good morning, Inyobong. How?
You are not audible. I cannot hear anything coming from the studio.
Can you hear me now, Inyobong? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Oh, wow. Obviously can't be on mute now. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Oh. I've not heard you for like the past minute.
Okay, all right. So you didn't hear when I said that it's actually nice to be calling my own name, you know, on air. Good to speak with you, namesake.
Yeah, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine. So we want to review some of those policies, looking at the first half of the year. We've had a lot of good news, movement in the market, equities. We saw capital importation also rise quarter on quarter. We've seen a lot of review of the growth for this year by the World Bank from 2.8 to 3.3, because everybody seems to think that the president is on the right track. And of course, this raises expectations. But you know, Nigerians are still feeling the pinch of a whole lot of things, subsidy removal and all of that. But let's get your perspective so far. Would you join every other person who believes we're on the right track, we're having positive movement in the economy so far in the year?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Granted, yes, the government has made, you know, very good policy statements in the first few weeks of this administration. I mean, depending on which side you are on, the citizen side of things, we know with the removal of fuel subsidy, with the proposed increase in the in electricity tariff, the unification of the exchange rate, there's been some sort of economic challenges that the average Nigerian has been subjected to. I mean, with inflation, with increase in the price of food and all of that. But on the business side, there's been a lot of progress. I mean, you just alluded to some progress we've made with capital importation. And I mean, that can be attributed largely to some of the statements in policy movements that government has made in terms of the convergence of the different windows for the exchange rate. I mean, one of the major challenges coming from the previous administration had been, you know, had been very difficult for foreign investors to move out capital, you know, with some capital control in place and difficulty in accessing forex. But with the liberalization of the exchange rate, it's somewhat easier to access forex and move out funds, and that has built investor confidence, as you would see with positive gains in the capital market. But this needs to be, you know, balanced with some fiscal policies that would ease the burden on citizens. And if you want to look at the impact of this policy across the four major sectors, like you would see with the real sector, consumption, obviously with a reduction in disposable income, we expect that consumption in the short term would sort of reduce. People are rationalizing their expenditure. People are deciding, you know, what the essentials are for them to spend on and what they can forego in the interim. I mean, on the external sector, with the opening of the borders, we expect that in terms of imports, we expect more imports, and that will have an implication for trade balance. And for remittances, if you are looking at net transfers, we expect that because of the reduction in disposable income, the pressure now on diaspora remittances would increase. And with a lot of conversations I've listened to lately, diaspora remittances after the implementation of the subsidy removal, has had to increase because the cost of living has increased, and this has had an implication for the cost of living crisis for Nigeria. And so we expect that also in the short term, remittances, net transfers would also increase.
So I don't think, for instance, when you look at the capital importation, it's for the first quarter. That was even before the swearing in of President Tinubu. So it seems investors were already on standby to say, oh, things are going to turn around in Nigeria. And that's why we saw that move even before we settled election issues and all of that. Now, on the other hand, we cannot say that we have started seeing the fruit of these policies yet. I guess looking at the time lag that's required and all of that, because it's still, FX is still an issue in the country. Supply has not increased, and the unification of the rate has not really been achieved yet, because you still have, the price or the rate of the naira, going this way and that. How long do we have to wait to start feeling the relief or the fruit of these policies? We're still even waiting for the palliative, apart from states like Rivers State, where the governor has provided some buses. We haven't heard stuff from the federal government yet.
For the palliatives, I'd like to take it from your last point. For the palliatives, I'm necessarily not holding my breath, largely because, if the government had any plans to, to provide any cushioning effect, resulting from the removal of subsidy, that would have been in place before it was announced. And as you know, there have been several claims around the revenue challenges we have, the competing needs to provide services, with service delivery and all of that. So I'm not holding my breath, but it's important that government finds a way, to cushion the effects. Especially for the most vulnerable members of society, and this should not be left to the federal government. The state governments, in their own different ways, should find ways to reach the hardest hit by these policies in their respective states, and it's within their domain. And coming back to the time lag, yes, there's usually a lag between when policy is implemented and when you feel the effect. But in terms of investor confidence, like I had said, we've seen some improvement in that regard, especially with certain things around certain appointments. I was really happy with the last appointment made with the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax. That's one that is welcome if he's able to live up to the expectation. We know his track record as it regards fiscal policy and tax over time, and we're hoping that he'll be able to bring that to bear in terms of advising government on the right policies to take to be able to improve the ease of doing business, and improve the standard of living generally for Nigerians.
What would you say are the low-hanging fruits at this time?
For me, for perception, for virtue signaling, it's the cost of governance. People need to begin to see that citizens alone should not bear, the brunt of, this hard times or this sort of policies, as the case may be. So governments should begin to appear as one who is willing to also, take haircuts, tighten its belts, reduce waste, reduce inefficiency as regards its expenditure, rationalize tax expenditures, a lot of those waivers that he would often give to businesses that Nigerians are not getting value for money. These are areas where I believe a lot of movement can happen so that we can create some savings that we can use to implement programs that would directly affect the lives of Nigerians. So, I mean, government, and I mean not only the executive, with this legislature as well, citizens need to begin to see that there's some lifestyle change. We need to see that the government is making attempts to implement, the Orosoye report. So we are keenly looking at what will come out with with regards to the cabinet list, to see if, there had been, news had come out that they intend to increase the number of ministers to 42. I hope that is not the case. And we've had these conversations that, some chief executives of some agencies or corporations of government should be recognized as ministers, so that we can reduce, begin to, merge some of these agencies that have duplicating roles, and begin to look at reducing the cost of governance. Also, with regards to the appointments of SAs and PAs, both at the federal level and at the subnational level, people need to begin to see that government is lean. In terms of perception, so that we see that everybody is trying to adjust to the times. We don't want to see government acquiring very expensive bulletproof SUVs, brand new at that, that you have to fuel with the new cost of fuel, when the average person on the street, cannot afford 3 square meals.
All right, so I guess you'll be one of those that will be happy with the former governor of Ogun State, now Senator Benga Daniel, who said that, he would forego, I don't know if it's to delay it or forego totally, some of his pension and allowances as ex-governor, because, that has also been a line of conversation where you have ex-governors in the Senate taking pension as former governors and still getting paid as senators and all of that.
Definitely, and I think a lot of the states that have those pension laws need to repeal all of those laws. The provisions are outrageous. You have states that, with a high poverty rates, and you have pension laws that give, provisions to governors, ex-governors, for houses in Abuja, houses in Lagos, with cars that have to be changed every 3 years. For even some ex-governors that spend only 1 term in office, that's not our reality at the moment. So we also expect to see that in a lot of these states where they have these outrageous pension laws, that there are moves to repeal these laws, because we expect that, in the time that these political office holders have held office, they would have been able to amass enough goodwill and wealth, in quotes, to be able to take care of themselves for the rest of their lives. So we don't have that luxury of them also continuing to put burden on the purse. There are persons who moved moved on from being state governors to the National Assembly, and we suspect that they are still drawing allowances from the states and the National Assembly. For the governor to come out outrightly to say that he doesn't want to be part of that, it means there's a machinery in place that allows him to still access some of these benefits from the state. And so the states need to really look at this. This would also, add to the conversation around the low-hanging fruits for states, because the states really need the funds to carry out or properly implement their budgets, especially on critical areas that affect the people. And so we need to begin to look at areas where we can cut waste to redirect these funds or reallocate these funds to addressing inequality, reducing poverty, and creating wealth.
All right, thank you so much, Nyo Bongusen, Head Research and Policy Advisory with Budget. Thank you for sharing your views with us this morning.
Thanks for having me, and have a lovely day.
And you too. All right, let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll go to all the parts of the program right here on Business Morning on Channels Television.